Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. In a short while, we will begin our program. For everyone's convenience, please take note of some reminders. To be properly acknowledged during the press conference, we highly encourage you to rename yourself using the format that was sent on the Zoom chat. Kindly always keep yourself on mute throughout the press conference, but you may switch on your cameras later on. Questions shall be entertained through the live interaction with the panel members and the Zoom chat feature. For live questions, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom and wait for the host to acknowledge you before stating your question. We also highly discourage independent recording by the participant because we will be releasing the official copy of the recorded press conference after the event. And please don't forget to help us spread the word on how we can find joy and hope amidst the pandemic by encouraging everyone to register for free on the upcoming JCL conference on December 8 to 12. The link will be sent in the Zoom chat as well. In a short while, we will begin our program. So at this point, we would like to also acknowledge the presence of our panel of speakers, panel of international speakers, whom we would be meeting in a short while. We have here Dr. Hal Urban. We have Deacon Harold Burke Sievers. We also have Dr. Raul Nidoy. And we also have here, or later rather, we will have Mr. Charbel Raish. And also, we have here the representatives from different media partners and PAREF schools. Thank you so much for being here with us, ladies and gentlemen. We are excited to be with you this morning. So please take note of the Zoom reminders we just sent in the Zoom chat. And once again, we discourage independent recording of the proceedings as we would be releasing an official recording of our event in a short while. All right, so let's just wait for everyone to come in. We would like to encourage everyone to maximize our Zoom chat feature. So let's try that right now. If you are also as excited as we are for this event, please type number 1 in the Zoom chat box. Okay, we'll just try if everyone can access it. Very good. Great. So you can use the Zoom chat feature to tell us your questions for our panelists later on. Once again, the reminders are flashed on screens for the benefit of everyone. All right, so now that everyone is in the Zoom, we can start with the program. Hello, everyone.
Fantastic.
Good morning, wherever you are in the world. All right.
Stand up and stretch.
All right, so we'll wait for others to come in. Some are still connecting their audio. Okay, great. So once again, the Zoom reminders are flashed on screen for the benefit of everyone. By my clock, it's already 10 a.m. and that signals us to start this very much awaited event. So hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Burns O. Kaasi. I am the conference coordinator for the Parents for Education Foundation. Welcome to the press conference of the Jesus-Centered Life International Conference. I'm very excited also to introduce to everyone my co-host for today, the ever-dashing and ever-proud PAREF mom, Mrs. Cher Anonas. Hello, Miss Cher. How are
Good
you?
morning, Burns. I was just letting you say hello to all of our guests today. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you today. Thank you to all of those that are joining us from all over the Philippines and all over the world. It's a very great and exciting morning, and we're very excited to share a lot of the goings on that will be happening in the international conference in December this year. So thank you very much for joining us today. So Burns, I know that you said earlier we are going to be meeting a lot, well, some of our international speakers today. And you did say that we have well, speakers coming in not just from the Philippines and well, not just from within the country, but we also have, apart from some of these notable speakers. We also have the very author of the book that inspired this movement and this conference. So we are super excited to hear from all of them this morning. But I think before we get to that, Burns, we do want to give people a reminder of how it was at last year's JCL conference.
Right, that's correct, Miss Cher. I have been really looking forward to being with everyone today as we join our friends from the media and our international panel of speakers in really discovering this theme of discovering joy and peace amidst the pandemic. But as you mentioned, it's important that we take a look back because Jesus Centered Life is a conference, an annual event that was started by PAREF in December 2020 as a gateway to the celebration of the 500 years of Christianity in the
Right.
Philippines. And we were blessed, Miss Cher, because last year we had more than 20,000 people sharing the joy and joining us in this international virtual gathering. So let's take a look back at what happened last December. Welcome to the Jesus Centered Life International Family Conference.
Hello. Thanks so much to the more than 20,000 people from around the world who joined us last December in the first Jesus-Centered Life Conference. Isn't it that we all enjoyed the sparkling discussion of our 31 international speakers, 57 Filipino speakers, and also 57 panelists from around the world, parents, teachers, and students. Wow. Now, given your enthusiastic feedback, I can feel that you are one with us in wanting to share this great gift of JCL, this great joy to so many people we are in contact with around the world. And this is in fact the very theme of this year's JCL 2021. Share the joy. Because this is the very message of Pope Francis to us. You receive the joy of the gospel. He told us the good news that God so loved us, He gave His Son for us, Jesus Christ. You are, He says, a joyful people. And so He urged us, reach out to others and bring them the hope and joy of the gospel. So Jesus-Centered Life Conference, JCL 2021. Share the joy. And so, take action. Register today. Invite others to register so they too can share the same sparkling joy. Maraming salamat po. Many thanks.
And there we have it,
Right.
Burns. That was a very quick recap of those eventual couple of days last year. And really, what was so exciting is that, as you mentioned earlier, last year we saw 20,000 people come from all over the world and really become a community as we all try to find our way back, having Jesus in the center of our lives. And this year, I think what's even more exciting is that the theme really is very relevant to the times. Sharing the joy, I guess, is that chosen theme for the year is nothing but perfect for the times that we are going through now. And I know that later on we will be asking our panelists, we will be asking the organizers why the theme was chosen, that particular theme was chosen for this year. But I just got to say, from last year where we had all of those activities over a span of how many days, and looking forward, because I know this year we are looking forward to doubling the attendance to 40,000 people. I am just excited to see how we can come together with more people, sharing the joy, sharing hope in this very exciting times.
Right, Miss Cher. And you know what? I just remembered with what you just shared that last year, even though it was a virtual conference, we had a lot of conversion stories happening. You know, we had students from all over the world telling us, thank you so much. We haven't been praying together as a family, but thanks to this conference, we were able to attend meditations and we were able to go back to Mass. And, you know, that's really what we want to have, to put Jesus at the center of everything that we are doing. And we are very, very excited to, as you said, double the attendance. And we have here our media partners who will be our partners in this advocacy in JCL 2021. So let's acknowledge our media partners. Michelle, who do
That's
we have
right.
here?
So once again, we thank all of these, all of our media partners for joining us today. We are just mentioning some of them. Of course, we'd like to thank the representative from Manila Bulletin. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have, of course, Ms. Kathy Moran. Good morning, ma'am. I'm from Philippine Star. We have our representative from DYRF Radio, Fuerza in Cebu. Thank you. I would like to say thank you in Bisaya. I know Burns, but I don't know how. Sorry, but I would hopefully I could have said that in Cebuano. But thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we also have Mr. Gian Navarro from the Cebu Catholic Television Network. Thank you very much for joining us, and Mr. Rafi Labrin from the Business World. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We also have a couple more guests, Burns.
Yes, we have here our friend from the CBCP Media Office, Family Watch, Tito Manjo Mendoza. We also have some podcasters from CBCP Media's Faith Watch YouTube channel. We have PAREF campus journalists from different PAREF schools around the Philippines. And we have Mrs. Marnie Manicad from GMA News TV, home-based show. And also, we have Nestle Semila from DYLA Newsbreak. So we are star-studded with a lot of media personalities
Exactly.
joining us.
A lot of stars in the morning today. So thank you to all of you for spending your morning with us.
And now, Ms. Chair, at this point, I'm sure everyone is looking forward to hearing from our panelists about the discussion topic for today. So let me introduce our first speaker. Our first panelist was a former atheist. Now, he is the PAREF Director for Personal Formation and a member of the PAREF Management Committee. He was the former Executive Director of PAREF Southridge School from 1991 to 2005. He obtained his doctorate in theology from the University of Navarre with the Latin honor Sobresaliente cum laude and an undergraduate degree in history cum laude from the University of the Philippines. He was the chairman of the Board of Trustees of Pro-Life Philippines and a member of the Board of Studium Theologiae Foundation and of the Family Media Advocacy. He regularly contributes his expertise in discussing national issues in Philippine media, TV, and radio. He authors free executive summaries on doctrinal matters, which can be mass-produced for social evangelization. And Michelle, he is the author of the Jesus-Centered Guide to the Happiest Life, which was one of the inspirations of the Jesus-Centered Life Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Raul A. Nidoy.
Good morning, Dr. Nidoy.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
All right. Of course, Dr. Nidoy will be joined today by another esteemed panelist. And let me introduce our next guest for today. He is known around the world as a dynamic deacon and is one of the most sought after speakers of the church today. His area of expertise includes marriage and family, discerning the will of God, and pro-life issues, among others. He has been working closely with Envoy Magazine, the Catholic World Report, EWTN, Catholic Answers Live, and the National Catholic Register. He is a Benedictine Oblate of Mount Angel Abbey, an associate member of the Fellowship of Catholic Scholars, and a consultation team member of the U.S. Conference of Bishops Directory for Catechesis. Most importantly, he's married to his lovely wife, Colleen, and they have 4 beautiful children. Ladies and gentlemen, EWTN's Deacon Harold Burke Sivers. Good morning.
Good morning. It's
Deacon.
great to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today.
Honored to be
And
here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deacon. We have another friend joining us, this time from Australia. He is our good friend from last year's Jesus Centered Life Conference, who has been our partner in many projects on evangelization. And without his help, I think we wouldn't have been able to reach more than 20,000 people around the world. He is the founder of Parousia Media, which was established in May 2005, specializing in faith formation resources and events. He has organized over 200 local and international events with global Catholic speakers. Over 150,000 people have been blessed and evangelized through the work of Parousia Media, and more than 100,000 formation resources have already been distributed globally in just a span of 15 years. Married to his lovely wife, Christine, and blessed with 7 little angels, our speaker gives multiple talks on evangelization, Bible timeline, and his conversion to Catholicism from Islam. Very interesting profile there you have, guys. Please welcome our good friend from Australia, Charbel Raish. Hi, Charbel.
Yeah, Ananda, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's an honor
Great to see you again.
for this year's conference.
All right, and rounding out our guest panelists, definitely not the least among all of them, our next panelist holds a bachelor's and master's degree in history and a doctorate in education from the University of San Francisco. For 36 years, he was an award-winning teacher at San Carlos and Woodside High Schools and at his alma mater, the University of San Francisco. Hal is the author of 6 books, all with an emphasis on good character. His first book, Life's Greatest Lessons, was selected by Writer's Digest as the inspirational book of the year. Since 1992, he has made more than 1,000 presentations in 41 states and 6 foreign countries. In 2005, he was awarded his highest honor, the Sanford and McDonald Lifetime Achievement Award at the Character Education Partnership National Forum. Friends, let's all meet Dr. Hal Urban. Good morning.
Hi, everybody. I'm like others, I'm honored to be here. That's quite a distinguished group of panelists. So I'm glad to be among them, and I hope to learn as well as share today with you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much for
for
being
joining
here
us.
with us, gentlemen. And now that we have introduced our panel of international speakers, Ms. Cher, let's just give some reminders to our friends from the media to make sure we would be maximizing this learning experience. First,
Right.
please make sure everyone's microphones are muted to avoid distractions during our presentation. Second, anyone can send in their question using the Zoom chat feature, and we will be reading your questions or acknowledging your intention to unmute if you want to be able to interact with our speakers by turning on your cameras and actually mentioning the things that you want to say. And lastly, please remember to rename yourselves in Zoom and put the name of your media outfit before your names. So now, Michelle, let's get the ball rolling.
All right. Well, we mentioned earlier the theme for this year is share the joy. And we also mentioned that this conference was greatly inspired by the book by Dr. Nidoy. So, Dr. Nidoy, perhaps we can start the first set of questions and address them to you. Why share the joy? Why did we choose that theme for the conference this year?
Well, it is really based on the words of the Pope Francis. As I mentioned there in the video, was talking to the Filipinos, but of course he was also talking to the world. He always talks to the world. And he was telling us that, we Christians, we have received the great news, such a great news. And we are supposed to share this great news of God's love, of Jesus Christ dying and rising for us and loving us infinitely, which is a great source of joy. We have to share that to the whole world. And that is that's a truth that is many times forgotten, that Christians are by nature called to a life of apostolate, of being apostles. So that's many times is fun. Even in homilies, many times we don't get to hear that, but that's a very important message. And that when you share the joy, in fact, you are also filled with joy, and you fill the whole world with joy. Okay, that's the main thing.
That's fantastic. And, Dr. Nito, I think it's always been joy, as he said, is, part of us being called to be part of that apostle, be apostles in our own little ways. But as what Burns will lead up to later, I think even more now, because of what's going on around the world, what everyone is going through, that message, that share the joy message, has a very special place in our world today, and how it applies to different circumstances that people, regardless of your background, your situation, your calling in life, your career, regardless of what you're going through, there is that special call to share the joy, and remember to keep sharing the joy regardless of your circumstances in life. So thank you for sharing that. I guess the reason for putting this conference together, and for deciding to make that particular theme the guiding idea for today, for this year's conference. So Burns.
Right, Miss Cher, I agree with you. This is just very inspiring how this Christian invitation to spread the joy or to share the joy has touched the hearts of many. And we have here gentlemen from different parts of the world who are joining us in this advocacy of sharing the joy. And I'd like to know from our international guests, what made you decide, to join us in this advocacy of quote unquote sharing this very deep Christian joy? Can we hear first from Deacon Harold? Would you like to share about what you want to share in terms of sharing the joy?
Yes, absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on. When I think of joy, and I think of a Jesus-centered life that's filled with joy, and I think about the family, my mind and my heart are drawn to the scriptures, to Romans chapter 8, where Paul says in verse 5, "For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh." And the word that he uses there in Greek means the worldly things, the things of the world, earthly things. So to focus your minds on worldly things means that's what you're going to focus your life on. He says, "But those who live according to the Spirit, on the things of God, set their minds on the things of God." Makes sense. But here's the kicker. To set the mind on the flesh is death. So to focus your entire life, your heart, your soul, your mind on worldly things, on things that are going to pass in this world, on things that are not going to sustain, is death. In other words, mavet in Hebrew means to cut yourself off from God's life. So to focus on the things of the world cuts you off from God. But to focus on the Spirit is life and peace. So by focusing on the things of God, you find life and peace. And that is where the joy comes from. Now, in thinking about this, particularly when it comes to the conference and the Philippines specifically, there's no question in my mind, and I mean this sincerely with all my heart, that Philippines are one of the few Catholic countries that are still holding its own in this world today. If you look at, for example, Ireland, Mexico, many countries in South America, they've all fallen to the culture. They're capitulating to the culture. And who's suffering? The family. So when I read Dr. Nadoy's book, when I had a chance to review it and write a review for it, I was absolutely thrilled, because this confirmed to me that the Philippines, along with Poland, are the two countries in the world, even more so than the United States, that are leading in a very deep, rich, beautiful, and meaningful way. And this conference is a way to focus that attention on family life with Jesus as the heart and the center. So I am thrilled that the Philippines is taking the lead in this.
Thank you so much, Deacon Harold. Indeed,
Thank you for your thank you for your belief in the Philippine Christians, but thank you for your insight. So really, that message of sharing, the joy. I guess applies to a lot of Christians around the world, to different circumstances, as Deacon Harold said. If you just base it on that understanding that if you get that joy, right, from Christ, and you base it there, regardless of what's happening outside, you can still emanate that and feel that joy in your life. So, Dr. Urban, how about you? The theme for this year is share the joy. In that context, sir, what is your take on this particular theme, and how do you think this applies to us leading Jesus-centered lives?
You know, my first thought is Deacon Harold is kind of a tough act to follow. You know, we do share something though. We share our first name. On my birth certificate it says Harold, but somewhere along the line it got shortened to Hal. But one of the things that really did attract me to this, I should say two things. There's two terms that you're using kind of in your title and subtitle. One is Jesus-centered life. And that really rings a bell with me because it took me about 40 years before I finally understood at a deep level what a Jesus-centered life means. And I know that my life is full of joy when I lead a Jesus-centered life. When I get away from it, not so much joy. The other word itself is the word joy. Very often people think that happiness and joy are the same thing, and they're really not. Joy has much more depth to it. Let me give you an example. Here in the United States, I'm a real big fan of baseball, and I love the San Francisco Giants, who are playing right now. I know you guys are all in the morning, but I'm in the evening. I'm going to go to bed after we finish tonight. But anyway, I'm a big baseball fan, and when the Giants win, I'm happy. But if they lose, I'm not happy, but I'm still joyful. I hope everybody understands what I mean, because I have something deeper inside that comes from leading a Jesus-centered life when I do that. And I think probably all of us slip at times. So I've learned the habit of starting my day in prayer, ending my day in prayer, and trying to find some time during the middle of the day to get that gospel message that Deacon Harold shared with us. And again, I was about 40 when I first discovered the richness of the Bible, not only Jesus, but Paul and James, and those people really give us some great advice. And I've learned that I need constant reminders, and I think everybody else does too. So that's what attracted me. And I don't know how many of you know Man Rentoy, but I met him a number of years ago. He's invited me to the Philippines twice. One of the most vivid memories I have in my life is I had never gone to Mass on the top floor of a shopping center before. And that's in Manila there. It's hard enough to get people to go to Mass in churches, but that shopping center Mass was fantastic. And it was full of people, and that filled me with joy.
Such a novel experience, Dr. Urban. Only in the Philippines, I guess, that you can do your shopping and then also have, a chapel and go to Mass in the same place. So an occasion, I guess, to have joy, right? But I guess what an interesting answer, Dr. Urban, because let me just take note that you mentioned you were 40 years old, you said, when you discovered joy. And I think that bears repeating, because the fact also that you said that you need constant reminders, right, to keep your eye on that joy, I think is also one of the reasons why this conference is all the more relevant to a lot of people. Because again, when you talk about joy, I guess it's not a one-off one kind of thing when you find it and you will keep it and that's it, right? For all of us, it's something that is an ongoing journey, something that we have to nurture all the time, whether that is by hearing Mass at the top of a shopping mall, right? Like Dr. Urban, or you find it somewhere else. I guess that's one of the reasons why this conference is all the more relevant to a lot of people.
Yes. And I would like to highlight also what Dr. Urban said earlier, the difference between joy and happiness. And we have a lot of young students here from PAREF and perhaps other campus journalists. And a lot of young people are looking for happiness. But I guess through Dr. Urban's short testimonial earlier, and this is just the first round of our Q&A, guys, we already learned something very deep and profound, that we have to look not for fleeting happiness, but for something that is deep and lasting, and that is joy. Thank you, Dr. Urban, for that. Okay, and we have another friend here. He's our friend from Australia, and he's been doing a lot of work in terms of evangelization, in terms of sharing the joy, and he's been our partner. So, Charbel, tell us about your thoughts on this Jesus-centered life and share the joy. What made you interested to become a partner of PAREF in this advocacy?
Yeah, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm filled with joy, of course, every time I talk about the faith, but every time I'm connected with people in the Philippines, because that joy you all have over there is very infectious. Let me tell you, I had the honor of going to the Philippines with Deacon Harold and meeting Emmanuel Rentoy and seeing a few of the schools and those chapels in the shopping centers, and it was great to see. But I have to admit, you don't know what you have. I didn't appreciate the Catholic Church for many years of my life. Throughout high school, I pretty much fell away from my faith. And it wasn't until I discovered the Catholic faith in a real way that I really discovered true joy. And it's funny, I'm so glad that Dr. here has mentioned the difference between happiness and joy. And it is true, it's something that's everlasting. Joy is something that helps us persevere through any suffering. Joy is something that we know is what we can look forward to in heaven. Joy is something we can do our work with joyfully. And even though we may not, we use the word enjoy, but even though we may not have fun at work or have fun during our studies or have fun, it's not just about fun, it's about a deeper interior, conviction and joy, knowing that we're doing it for a higher call really helps us get through anything. And so I was attracted to this Jesus-centered life, having the honor of interviewing Dr. Nadoy last year and learning about his book and being able to print the book locally here and having to read it. It has so many gems in it. And so I think it's important for us as Catholics, if we have any hope in bringing Christ to the world, we need to, number one, bring Christ to the center of our life in all that we do. And two, we have to be joyful about it. And if we're not joyful about it, how on earth can we expect others to be attracted to this faith of ours? So we need to be able to interiorize this Christ life, and then that way it could penetrate to the rest of the world. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm filled with joy to be here with everyone.
Great, thank you,
for that
Charbel.
insight. Well, again, Burns, while we do have other questions for our panelists, this press conference, of course, is primarily for our friends in the media. So for any of our journalists, media friends today, if you have any questions, you can go about it in two ways. You can either type your questions in the chat box and we can ask those questions for you, or if you'd like to ask them yourselves, please just turn on your camera so that we can go ahead and acknowledge you, and you can ask this esteemed panel of guests your questions directly. Just in case, again, if you are a little bit camera shy and you'd like Burns and I to do the asking for you, we can do that as well. You can just type in your questions in the chat box and we can have, there you go. So we can ask those questions for you. In the meantime, while we're waiting for our guests, for our media friends to send us their questions, again, either by asking it directly or typing it in the chat box. I know, Burns, you also have summary questions for our panelists today. So perhaps go ahead while we're waiting for our friends from the media.
Right, Michelle. Before that, I just want to mention that we have a participant here in the Zoom room who said that the last chapter of Dr. Urban's book, Choices That Change Lives, is about joy. So perhaps later we can ask our guests to talk about their books. And I'm sure all of these resources will also add up to our armory as Christians, so to speak, right? Okay, so thank you so much to our media partners who will be sending in their questions later. But I would like to know the thoughts of our international speakers on the theme, not of the conference on December, but of the press conference that we are having today. So, gentlemen, we have been talking about sharing the joy. And this press conference theme is about the modern family in crisis. So, how do we describe the modern family, and what sort of crisis or crisis are we experiencing? So perhaps to contextualize things, we can start with Dr. Nidoy, who can share with us the modern Filipino family and the crises or many problems that we are experiencing here in the Philippines. Go ahead, Dr. Nidoy.
Well, right now, right now, any family in the world is experiencing the pandemic. That's the most direct crisis that we are experiencing, and it's a terrible thing because millions are falling into extreme poverty. Especially here, we're already a poor country, and if they're not going to work for one day, they are really going to starve, and that's a big problem. And of course, all of the corollary issues that come with the pandemic. There's mental illness, undernourishment, and then you have all sorts of tensions in the family. And then, of course, here in the Philippines, we are also threatened with divorce. We are one of the few countries in the world, together with the Vatican, which do not have divorce. And that's a great blessing for us. But still, there are proponents, and they are trying to sway so many people to think of this of divorce. And it's very important that we precisely unify the family and find ways to convince people of the greatness of marriage and the greatness of family. There are many studies on the bad effects of divorce. But I'm not going into that. But I just like to mention a phrase from Pope Francis in Amoris Laetitia, where he said that if the family is centered on Christ, he will fill it with light. So as we have been discussing, if Christ is at the center, then everyone is filled with joy. And in fact, that is one of the secrets of the Filipino family. Whenever there are disasters here in the country, there are foreign media that come, and they're always amazed by the joy of the people. So because this pandemic is like a super typhoon, and the same thing should happen to us. And when there are people being interviewed while they're in waist deep water, they would always say, "Well, I'm going to cast my cares on Jesus Christ." So I think we have to keep on helping people to have the great foundation, which is the basis of all the other human things that they do, like part of the ways to overcome the anxiety of this pandemic is exercise, for example. Well, Jesus Christ exercised, and he in fact developed his body. And one of the other ways is we're supposed to the health experts tell us to get in contact with our friends during the pandemic. But the same thing, I mean, Jesus Christ was a very friendly person. He kept on getting in contact with people, and the Bible says that he increased in favor with men. And Frank Sheed would say that, well, that means he was an excellently nice fellow. So he was an excellent guy, and that's what we have to try to do during this time of crisis, and to follow his steps.
Thank you, Dr. Nidoy. What about from the US. No? So we heard from the Philippine context. Deacon Harold, how would you describe an American modern family, and what sorts of crises or crises do these families face in the US?
Well, following on what Dr. Nadoy said, which was absolutely beautiful, I myself am a child of divorce. I'm an immigrant to the United States. I was born in the Caribbean. We immigrated to the United States when I was a child, and my parents split up. And I'm often asked by young people, what is it like to be a child of divorce? And I tell them the truth. I mean, again, I don't want to demonize anyone, but this is how I felt going through that experience. Marriage is a beautiful thing. It really is. I've been married 27 years now, right? It's a beautiful thing, but it's also the cross. And divorce is when the parents put the cross down and the kids pick it up. And that's not a place you ever want to be in your relationship. In the United States, the crisis is they're trying to literally, instead of being made in the image and likeness of God, the culture is trying to make God in its own image and likeness. So they're trying to redefine the family. Like literally, marriage, the word comes from matrimony. Matrimonium in Latin literally means the state or condition of motherhood. Literally is what marriage means. And so ultimately what the destruction of marriage and family is doing, it's really targeting the woman. And why? Because she's the life giver and the life bearer. Think about it. She is the last person that God created. Then he stopped and had the rest, right? Because everybody says, oh, the woman's just an afterthought. No, she's not. She's not created second after the man. She's created last. She's the high point, the pinnacle, the apex of God's creative activity, is the one who gives life, the one who cooperates with the Holy Spirit in a very powerful way. We pray every Sunday, Credo Spiritus Sanctus Dominum et Vivificantem. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord and giver of life. And what the culture tries to do with this culture of death, as St. John Paul II called it, is trying to destroy life. So who do you have to go after? The one that gives life goes after the woman. And one of the ways that we're doing that is through divorce and redefining marriage. Marriage is no longer in the United States now, according to the Supreme Court. But I don't care what the court says. I follow Jesus Christ. I don't follow a court. But what the court said basically says is that marriage is whatever you decided to be. So we have foolishness, for example. People in the United States are marrying attempting, not even want to use it because it's not marriage, but they're attempting to so-called marry buildings and other inanimate objects. In fact, a woman in our state of Missouri tried to marry herself. It's called sologamy. She tried to marry herself. I mean, we're mocking God in this culture. We're mocking life. And the impact for the Philippines is this. They're trying to introduce divorce. It's like a gateway drug. You know how you as a young kid, you start smoking, then you start doing marijuana, then you start doing cocaine, right? But the gateway drug. What divorce ultimately is going to lead to, what they're trying to do ultimately, is to, by breaking down the family, that leads to abortion, that leads to euthanasia. All the things that we're seeing in these faith-based countries around the world are being dismantled. And in the Philippines, they're trying to dismantle it, starting with divorce. So the Filipinos have to stand strong and stand firm. And Dr. Nadoy's book, I think, is absolutely essential. I think this conference is essential. And I am personally committed to doing everything possible to help the family stay strong, because we as Catholics in the United States are looking to the Philippines. You know, we haven't lost the war because we know Jesus Christ is Lord, but we're losing the battle here. And we're looking to the Philippines for inspiration and strength when it comes to standing strong in the family.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deacon Harold, for preaching that to all of us. It's a message that we have to hear. Great. What about Dr. Urban? Any thoughts on the modern family in the crisis that it's facing today?
Well, as you can imagine, since I was a teacher for 36 years, and I taught teenagers full-time, and I taught university adults part-time, but I want to refer to what I saw change over those 36 years from 1965 up until 2001, the changes I saw in the family. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me the most was that I read some things about communication in families. And there was a research study done on how much communication, meaningful conversation there is in families. And this research project came to the conclusion that at least in American families, that kids between the ages of 8 and 18 spent 3.5 minutes per week in meaningful conversation with their parents. And I thought, no, that just can't be. I had a lot of nice kids in my classes, and I said, these kids have to talk more to their parents than that. And so I wanted to verify it based on my own students. I had about 150 of them. And I gave them a sheet of paper at the beginning of class, and all it had on it was, they didn't have to put their name on it. It just had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I said, all I want you to do is to think about each one of those days in the last week and write down the number of minutes that you spent in meaningful conversation with your parents. And I figured it would come out to an hour or two or something like that, and disprove this 3.5 minute baloney that I thought it was at the time. And I did this study, and this is a pretty good school, and these are pretty good kids. And it came out less than 3.5 minutes. And so when I totaled it up, I asked the kids, I said, well, how do you communicate with your parents? Now, this is both before and after cell phones came in, and texts and emails and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, well, how do you communicate with them? I said, oh, we leave Post-it notes. And I said, do you eat dinner together? Rarely did they eat dinner together. So that's one of the greatest opportunities for meaningful conversation, is to have something to talk about at the dinner table. But they didn't do it. And some of them said, I don't even see my parents during the week, and so I came to the conclusion that was one of the main downfalls of not only marriage itself, but of relationships with the kids. And when I wrote my second book, it's called Positive Words, Powerful Results. I have a chapter in that book about how loving words can change a family, but you have to have conversation to start with. And it's a very simple thing, but I was a single father raising 3 boys by myself. I'm a victim of divorce also, but it was my wife who left me when my kids were very young, but I had custody of them. And so I know the effect it had on me, and I know the effect that it had on them. So I had to kind of work overtime. But one of the things that we did that I thought was kind of magical was that at the dinner table, my kids always wanted to eat fast and go outside and play. And I said, no. I said, we haven't seen each other. You've been at school. I've been at school. We need to talk. And of course they would say, oh, Dad, that's boring. And I said, well, let's make sure we have something good to talk about. And I tried a whole bunch of different things, but I accidentally came across this one thing that has worked magically, and I've shared it literally all around the world. I asked what I call the magic question once we sat down to dinner and thanked the Lord for our meals and other riches. I asked them, what was the highlight of your day? Simple question. What was the best thing that happened today? You know what? Why it's magic? Number one, it gets whoever was asked that question, it gets them to reflect on their day and only think about the good things. I asked them the highlight, not the highlight and the low light or the low light, but the highlight. And so they think about all of the good things that happened that day, and then they share it at the dinner table. And a lot of times it was something funny, but that's okay. Laughter at the dinner table, laughter is healthy. And so the other thing that's magical about the question is that you can ask the same question every night. You don't have to come up with a new one. You're guaranteed to get different answer and always a positive answer. So it was really fun. And when, my kids are in their 50s now, and when we get together, I usually ask them the question, what's been the highlight of your life since the last time we were together? But I really encourage people to do that. And then the other thing too, besides the dinner thing, is that even though I made a lot of mistakes as a father, I think the best thing I ever did, and my kids tell me this, is that whenever we had any kind of conflict in our family, I said, okay, in the living room. That was separate from where the TV was. We would go in the living room, we would sit down, and everybody would express their point of view. And 99% of the time, the issue got resolved. We talked it out. And I really think that 3.5 minutes, if parents would make a conscious effort to bring that up and have some meaningful conversation every day, that would be fantastic for family. And I'm glad I got the opportunity to share that with you.
That is very, very important, Dr. Urban. Family dinners are so very important, and I hope all the families in the Zoom room will try to do that later. I would ask my mom the highlights of her day today.
That's right.
What about you, Charbel? What are your thoughts on the modern family and the crisis that it's facing today?
Yes, I mean, I'm married myself, and you could say I'm in a modern family. However, in Australia, unfortunately, 1 in 2 marriages are ending in divorce. And the statistics are showing here that the rate of divorce is pretty much the same in the Catholic Church as it is in the secular marriages. So there's no real difference between Catholic marriages and secular marriages. And we have to ask ourselves a serious question: what is going on? And I think our whole culture right now is really, we have an identity crisis, an identity problem, and particularly an identity of what marriage is, and the idea of what love is. And we need to go back to basics. I think today we're living in a very fast-paced world, especially in Australia. You know, all the luxuries of the world, we have it here. We've got all the all the different technologies you can think of, and life sort of, we've got all these gadgets, all these distractions. And I think in the busyness of our life, we've probably lost focus of what it is to be not only within marriage, who we are as husband and wife, who we are as parents, who we are as even as a family. And we need to get back to the basics. What is love? Am I actually being loving when I'm distracted with my work, and I come home and I bring all my work worries home, and then I bring all my stresses home, and then I actually am not present to my wife or present to my children. I'm living still with my mind at work or at school or at college or whatever it is, and I'm not living in the moment, and I'm not living in that time and being attentive to the person I'm talking to. And so we have a lack of communication these days. We're distracted. We're not really loving when we focus on ourselves. We need to be focused on the other. And, you know, I love our faith, because the more we understand our faith, the more we understand what the deeper meaning is. And so love, for example, our model is, if we live a Jesus-centered life, Jesus himself, the actual model of love, who gave up his life for us, that's love. He gave us everything. He poured everything out on the cross because of an act of love. He is love. And I love that, there it is, I love the idea that our Lord is so humble, but loves us so much to pour out, and he doesn't stop giving on the cross. He resurrects, he's in heaven, and he's still giving. How is he doing that? In the source and summer of our faith, in the Eucharist, he's still giving us his love, body, blood, soul, and divinity. He's there for us when we call upon him. And when 2 and 3 are gathered in his name, here he is in the midst of us. So Jesus needs to be center. And in the marriage, I love Archbishop Fulton Sheen quotes that, you know, he mentions, it's 3 to get married, right? It's husband, it's wife, but it's also God. And if we take God out of our marriages, we're missing a very key component to what makes up that relationship. And I love my wife today more than I did when I first met her. And love isn't something that's just about the romance. It's actually a deeper thing. It's about giving yourself to her, and the sacrifices she made for me. I just love her more and more. And I think if we create opportunities to communicate, but also stop and reflect on our lives, we realize the blessings we have in every marriage. So I think, yeah, we got to get back to what is love, giving of ourselves to another person. What is our identity? You know, we share in the Trinity in marriage, which is beautiful. The two become one in the one flesh union, and that one flesh union becomes three with children. It's a Trinitarian imagery. And our God from all eternity loved, from all eternity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, His family, and we are now family. And so when you marry someone, it's just beautiful. And I don't know, we're going to touch on divorce later, but I don't know whether to say something about that now or later. But I will.
Sure, go ahead, Sir Bell.
About divorce, one thing that's really struck me, you know, when you meet someone that you fancy, you're just strangers. So at one point, I didn't know who my wife was. She was just some stranger. Then I got to know her. Now, who were the closest people in my life growing up? It was my siblings, my brothers. It was my parents. And I had intimate relationships with my best friends, with my family. But this stranger that came into my life, I had to get to know. I got to know what her favorite movies were, her favorite color, her favorite food. I got to get to know, I started to court her. Then I started to get to know what likes and dislikes of hers, what were her values. And as I was growing closer and closer to her, something was changing. My intimacy with my closest people in my life, I started to introduce now this complete stranger who's become now my friend, who then became my fiance, who then became my wife. And on my wedding night, I, consummated the marriage and moved on. And all of a sudden it struck me right through my marriage that what I share with my wife, who used to be a stranger, is the most intimate type of relationship I've ever had and I ever will have. And so just like I can never tell my brother, my mum, my dad, you are no longer my dad, you are no longer my brother, you are no longer my mother, because we're blood, we're sort of tied in our DNA. We are one family unit. How much more so to my own wife can I say, you are no longer my wife? It just can't happen, because that relationship I have with my wife is so intimate. I'm sharing the closest parts of my life with her, that bond is so strong. In fact, we're now closer than I am with my parents. We're now closer than I am with my own children. We are now, it's the closest, most intimate relationship you can have on earth. And therefore it's a serious deal. When you're married, a transformation happens, and it's beautiful in our faith. It is the sacrament of matrimony. It is a sacrament, and you are no longer living for yourself, but you're now living for the other person, and that two become one. You are now family, and that's unbreakable, and it's powerful. And I love our faith for it. And my wife is closer than a sister, closer than an auntie, closer than a mother, closer than anything. She is my lifelong battle partner, and we are bonded for the rest of this life. So it's amazing, thanks to our faith.
What an interesting take on marriage, right? That's a powerful testimony for what makes a marriage supposed to be for forever, not something like what Deacon Harold said. It's just could be cast as easily. So thank you for the questions from all our media partners. So we will start acknowledging, of course, your questions in the chat box. Let's start off with Mr. Gian Navarro from the Cebu Catholic Television Network. Mr. Navarro, your question, please, for our guests. Go ahead, Mr. Navarro, if you'd still like to
I'm Buntag. This is Gian Navarro of CCT. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me there? All right. Here in Cebu City, better that the COVID-19 cases are still low after 2 months. And then despite of being cautious and being more conscious in following
Okay, we seem to
I
have
guess
some connection problems. Mr. Navarro? All right, Mr.
we
Navarro?
can have him later.
That's right. We'll come back to you, sir, as soon as we get your connection sorted out. If ever, you can also send us your question in the chat box and we can relay that to the guests if that will be easier on the bandwidth perhaps. So while waiting for your question to be relayed to us, let's also say hello to Miss Moran from the Philippine Star. We saw her raising her hand. Good morning, Miss Moran.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead with
Okay.
your question.
Yeah, I just would like to know, I think this press con is for a conference that will be held in December. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to know how there can be joy, or joy can be communicated in a different way for us Filipinos, especially during this time of no joy and election year. Maybe there's a way of communicating the joy of Christ in our lives through the conference, and how will the conference achieve this? Thank you.
Dr. Nidoy, you might want to take the lead on that.
Well, the beauty of this conference, like last year, we had 57 international speakers. We had around 70 local speakers, no, and 57 panelists also from all over the world. So these are now we will have something similar for this December 2021, no? And there will be several expressions, several interpretations, several explanations of this joy, and that's the beauty of it, no? So we have different backgrounds, different takes, no? Different styles. So you will get a pick of what style best suits you, no? So this is like I don't know if that's the term, is smorgasbord of, or yeah, you have like a great banquet, no? Of mainly lay evangelizers or Christian speakers, which is part of the vision of John Paul II, of lay people being at the forefront of expressing the beauty of the faith, the joy of the faith. That is that's the great thing about this conference, no, which is a yearly conference. And this year's theme is just very specific. It's share the joy.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nidoy.
You know, I'd like to respond to the comment about COVID and going through a period with no joy. I'm a product of a Jesuit education. I went to the University of San Francisco, which is a Jesuit university. And one of the first things I learned there was that God gave us a free will. And that means instead of creating robots, he gave us the opportunity to make choices in our lives. And I firmly believe that joy is a choice, even in bad times. As I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between happiness and joy. If the Giants lose their baseball game tonight, I choose to be joyful, even though they lost. I'm glad they got that far. And during COVID, what I not only tried to do, but accomplished, was that I, instead of focusing on the things I can't do, I focus on the things that I should be thankful for. And I'm not very good at quoting specific scriptures, but I know scripture verses that mean a lot. And somewhere in there, I think more than once, it says, be thankful in all things. And so I focused on what I did have during COVID instead of what I couldn't do, what I didn't have, and so on. And I found a lot of joy. I can sit down, and it doesn't have to be reading from the Bible, although that does give me a great deal of joy. But it can be appreciating the fact that I have a loving wife that I've been married to for 40 years now. The fact that, you know, I hear from my former students a lot. I have a comfortable home that I live in. I'm healthy. And there's just so many things that literally, not happiness, but joyfulness. And sometimes you just have to look for it a little bit harder, but it's a choice. I don't let circumstances determine how I feel. I choose joy.
Thank you, Dr. Urban, for weighing in on that question.
All right. We have Mr. Navarro back. Hopefully the connection will hold up. Go ahead, Mr. Navarro, with your question, please.
Oh, hello, my buntag. I am. Do you hear me clear out there?
Yes, we can.
Yes, now, sir, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. This is Gia Navarro from CCTN 47, the only Catholic television network in free TV in Asia. So this question goes to our speakers. Anyone can answer this. So yes, 2 months ago, we're now facing 2 months ago, we're facing in fear, despite of high number of cases of COVID-19 and high hospitalization rate. And now we're not, thank God, the COVID-19 cases here are lower. So despite of being cautious and being conscious in following COVID-related policies, not only here in Cebu, but in the whole Philippines, why do Filipino families are more preferred to be joyful with God?
Very interesting question. So, Gian, just to make sure we understood it correctly, you're asking how, despite all of these challenges, the Filipino family remains joyful. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Or how
Any
they
insights?
could be, I guess. Or how they
Yes.
could
Yes.
still be joyful.
Yes.
Would any of our panelists perhaps want to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Tito.
so yeah, so I could totally understand where Mr. Navarro's coming from. I mean, I literally was speaking in a parish last year, in March of last year. And as I was speaking, a letter came from the bishop shutting everything down. So I barely finished my talk, and then the pastor got up there and announced that, you know, we have to shut everything down, no masses, no meetings, no. And I was on a plane home the next day for a year. All my trips, I was supposed to go to the Philippines, I was supposed to go to Australia, New Zealand, I was supposed to go to Poland, I was supposed to go to Sri Lanka, I was supposed to go to a bunch of, and everything shut down, everything was canceled. And I think Dr. Urban's exactly right. I had a choice. I could have become depressed. I could have said, look, this is not fair. You know, I gave up everything. I had a job for 23 years in law enforcement. I gave up all that. I had a consulting company. I gave up all that. And now this stupid little microscopic virus is stopping the whole world. And what's, you know, I mean, I could have done that. Or I made a choice to say, you know what? Jesus Christ is Lord of my life. Jesus Christ still loves me. I'm still in love with Jesus. No matter what happens, we'll get through this. Because if you look at Jesus on the cross, there is no resurrection without crucifixion. There is no Easter Sunday without Good Friday. And let's be real, most of life is Good Friday. Psalm 90, the psalm written by Moses, says, our span is 70 years, or 80 for those who are strong. And most of these are emptiness and pain, right? They pass swiftly and we are gone. So every single person in life is going to suffer. So it's not about saying that suffering is meaningless in order to avoid it. It's about finding meaning in the suffering that's unavoidable. You see, because everyone's going to suffer. So instead of wallowing in our own pity, because everyone in the world is going through this, I still choose to follow Jesus, to make Jesus the number one priority of my life, to say, you know what, Lord, I love you. I trust you. I give my life to you. We're going to get through this, because if you can get through enduring the cross, the most painful form of death there was back at the time, but for ours is taking the weight of our sins upon himself, I could take not traveling for a year. I could take, you know, having to refigure out how I'm going to pay bills and things like that. And God, and it worked. God made a way. You know, God had to get creative. But there's some beautiful things. I think what Dr. Urban said again, focusing on the positives. All of our college kids came home. Because in fact, my daughter goes to University of San Francisco. She's a senior this year, but she had to spend her entire junior year at home. And she didn't get to study abroad like she was planning. I mean, ever since she was like in 8th grade, I can't wait to get to college so I can study overseas. That was taken away from her. My oldest daughter was a senior. She spent her senior in college at home. The twins spent high school at home, but we had this extra time with the kids that we didn't think we were going to have. And that is precious time, you know, that was where we got our joy from. We're all together. We're all healthy. We focus on the positive things, knowing that nothing in this world can take our love that we have for Jesus and Jesus' love for us. That is still number one. And we will get through any crisis that happens in this world because of our faith and our love for Jesus Christ and our trust in him. Jesus, I trust in you, right? The message of divine mercy.
I'd like to piggyback a little bit on what Harold just said, because it reminds me of something that I taught when I returned to a Jesus-centered life. When I went through that divorce when I was about 29 or 30, I kind of drifted away, partly anger, you know, whatever the reason. But when I realized that wasn't working out very well, I was better off when I had a faith. One of the things that I really appreciated was the fact that I have some Protestant friends that really taught me some very valuable things. I think I'm probably older than all of you, so you may not relate to the fact that the way I was taught to pray. I went to a Catholic grammar school, kindergarten through 8th grade, and every prayer I learned was a memorized prayer. It wasn't very personal. It wasn't between me and Jesus personally. It was just something memorized. And the church doesn't do that anymore, but it did for a long time. And so prayer was kind of impersonal to me. And I had some Protestant friends that really helped me understand that, you know, Christianity is a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and you have conversation, and that's really what prayer is. And a good friend of mine who was a Protestant minister and author, he wrote a book called Jesus Teaches on Prayer. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It had a lifelong impact on me. And one of the things I'll never forget that he said is that you'll know that you're really praying to Jesus when something really bad happens in your life and you say, Jesus, thank you for the circumstances that you have placed me in and for the victory that will come out of it. And I say that prayer every time something bad happens. You know, like Harold, you said, most of life is Good Friday. I'm going to remember that one. That was really good one. And that fits in with that prayer too. You know, we couldn't have the resurrection without Good Friday. So anyway, I hope people do remember to say that. Thank you for the circumstances that you placed me in and for the victory that will come out of it.
Thank you, Doc Al. All right.
Thank you
We
for
have
answering
more questions.
my
I
questions.
know. Thank you very much. We do have a lot of questions. We will try to get to them. There are similar questions in the chat box, which we'll try to consolidate in the interest of time. But we'd also, I guess, like to move on to another question from this time from, okay, so we are going to be calling on JM Miguel de la Cruz. JM, we know you have a lot of questions. You placed a lot of questions in the chat box. Perhaps you'd like to prioritize which one you'd like to ask our panelists. The floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, yes, I have a lot of questions in the chat box, but this one I haven't typed because this one I think I prioritize and I would like to ask it vocally instead of in the chat box. I heard a lot of our international speakers giving their praises to the Philippines, and that was very inspiring for me, especially that was very touching, especially since it's almost unlike you guys had more hope in my own country than I did. So I think my question is, what can the Filipinos do next? Like, yes, we are a very Catholic country, but as we've already said, that's already starting to fade. We are being threatened with divorce, and a lot of our Catholic families might even just be Catholic in name only. So how can we move beyond that? What is the Philippines' next move so that we could even further evangelize the world per se.
Wonderful question. Great. Anyone wants to start with that? Charbel, were you raising your hand? Okay, go ahead, Charbel.
It's a great question, and I think again, one thing I could stress for the Filipino people: don't forget your identity. This identity is a big deal. Our identity as children of God, our identity in our faith. I speak so I'm a Maronite Catholic, right? So this is a different rite in the church. So there are Roman Catholics, Maronite Catholics, Melkites. So my wife is a Melkite Catholic. I'm a Maronite Catholic, but we are in Australia, so the majority of the churches are Roman Catholic. So I've got an appreciation for culture. But I think what you have in the Philippines that you please God don't lose is this beautiful culture that you can live your Catholic faith through. And think about America and Australia right now. These secular countries are losing their identity. I mean, what is it to be an American these days? And now pop culture, look at the Hollywood, look at the movies coming out, the music. They've pretty much started to introduce all sorts of ideas that are foreign to the very foundations that the civilizations were built on. So the Christian message is now frowned upon. The Christian message is now something that is very negative in these countries. Australia as well, it's very secular. And we can't even agree now. It's very tribal too. So the problems in America and Australia, you can't even agree to disagree. If you like a Democrat or a Republican, you can't even disagree and still be friends. It's pretty much very divisive right now. The whole idea of COVID and everyone's opinion of COVID is so divisive right now. There are so many issues that are dividing people, and it's sad to say that we can't even debate about things anymore, and we need to rediscover that. So in the Philippines, what do you have there that is so vital? First of all, I think you have an appreciation of family. It's still strong. Don't lose that. An appreciation of food, of course, and now the food. It's not just about the food itself. It's about what does the meals time do? You're bringing people together and you're actually having conversations. Doctor said earlier about the meal table. How powerful is it when we have conversations around the dinner table? So don't lose that. The Filipino culture is very strong about the food. And when you gather together, actually talk to each other. We're not on these things, these phones. Oh, sorry, there it is. The phones, where our eyes are always in the phones all the time. We're not having a conversation with each other, or we're distracted about our work or worried about the negative. I also want to reflect what Doctor said earlier. It's a choice. Joy is a choice. So as Filipinos, choose to lean into your culture. Don't shy away from your culture. Embrace the culture and live your Catholic faith with that culture. That's what it's a combination, right? So what can you do to count all the blessings and use that as a means of evangelization? You can evangelize through your Filipino culture more than you actually think. And I really believe that, what are some of the things those who are outside of the Philippines think of the Philippines? Manny Pacquiao, he's the famous boxer who's very famous. But what can he do to influence and evangelize? We don't need to be looking outside for inspiration. I believe look internal. The Filipinos have something that the world is desperate for, and you still have it. You've got a strong culture, and you still have the majority of the country believing in the Catholic Church. Please don't lose that, and really understand. If I can throw one last tip in, maybe if I could see an area of improvement, it would be probably the why behind our Catholic faith formation. Catholic formation is crucial, and I think if the Filipino culture will embrace further, why do we go to church on Sunday, but also why do we have this faith? Why do we have the fasting time before the feasting time? Why do we have these different celebrations? I know in January you have the big feast of the child Jesus, and you go out. It's beautiful. Embrace these cultural things, but also don't just leave it on the surface, but go deeper. Why do we do these things in our Catholic faith? And this conference that we're actually preparing for, the Jesus Center Live, is one way of offering faith formation. And I encourage you dive deep in your faith, look for resources, look for things that are going to nourish your faith. And I believe once we combine the head and the heart, the culture, the outside image of our faith, and the interior understanding of why we believe what we believe, wow, that's a force to be reckoned with. The body and the soul. And you guys in the Philippines have something special, and really embrace it and don't lose it, and then share that with the world. So I hope that helps.
Amazing. Thank you,
Thank
Charbel.
you very much.
It's so refreshing to hear from someone outside the Philippines telling us what we could do to strengthen
Yeah.
our faith. And I agree. Know the why, the head and the heart. No? So as a former anti-Catholic Protestant myself, I can agree that a lot of people leave the church because they do not know the why. Thank you, Charbel, for that. Any comments from our other panelists or me share? Okay, Hal, Dr. Nidoy or Deacon Harold?
You know, one of the things I did want to share with you earlier is that in the city that I live in, it has about 75,000 people, and there are 3 Catholic parishes. And 2 of the people that I most admire in my church and who have taught me a lot of things that I didn't previously know are 2 women, probably 20 or 30 years younger than me, that are both Filipino. And they come from that Filipino background where families were really important, and the faith stayed strong. And so this is kind of a backup on Charbel. Is that the right pronunciation of your name? Okay. What you just said, and then seeing how devout they are and how they live their life, and then having gone to the Philippines twice myself, I would echo what you said about the culture there and the strong identification of the Christian faith. And it's a matter of helping the kids understand that it isn't all those things out there, whether it's social media or the latest gimmick or whatever it is. It's the faith that is the only thing that's going to bring you real joy.
That's a fantastic take, I think. To hear it from when you gentlemen talk about how the culture, and I even presuppose you're mentioning Filipino culture because that was the question in particular. But if we take it and apply it to other countries, right? And this question also, can be applied to other situations as well. It just means really that whatever it is that is unique in your culture, you can use, right, to evangelize. Sometimes we don't see that. So thank you for mentioning that. The food, the ability to gather together, even let's say what your country may be known for, be it a sports and an athlete, may it be a cultural, I guess, icon, a festival, whatever it is that you celebrate nationally or as a people, is something that you can bank on to also help further evangelize or share that knowledge of Christ. So thank you for mentioning that. Sometimes it takes that outside perspective for people who are already here in the Philippines, to realize, oh yeah, we do have these things. And oh yes, food can play a part in sharing the joy to others. So thank you for that insight. Birds, I know we have a lot of questions in the chat box. We might have to keep the gentleman here for another 36 hours for those to be to be all addressed. But thank you for the very enthusiastic response from our media partners. I think Burns will try to get to some of them right now.
Yes, we have just around 10 minutes left before we wrap up today's press conference. But I'd like to ask the question coming from Maria Josel Ferrer, which I think is very important based on the theme of our press conference, which is the modern family in crisis. She said, based on my understanding on your sharing on marriage, I understood that each are advocating for a more loving marriage and less divorces in this generation. For couples who are experiencing marital problems such as abuse, fights, loss of feeling, divorce is the easiest way out of this. It's cheap, no, and it's very simple, unlike annulments, which can be very expensive and very complex, or other methods of fixing this problem. Given these, she's asking the gentlemen of the panel, what is your advice for those couples experiencing these marital issues for them not to get divorced?
Can I?
Dr. Nido, you can start, and then we'll hear from other friends we have here in the Zoom. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's a very important question because everybody's saying that now on the pro-divorce side. No? Since they're miserable, that's the divorce is like the way out for them to be happy. Now, there is a very important survey, national survey in the United States, a study conducted by the University of Chicago. And you can find it in a pro-divorce site. I mean, it's a divorce site that helps people get divorced. And the study shows that 77% of couples that were miserable, that's the term that they use, they were miserable. After 5 years, these couples were interviewed and they were already very happy. They have not divorced yet. They stayed in the marriage. And after 5 years, I think that's a very important study, especially here in the Philippines where everybody is now pushing for this thing with that kind of argument. Everybody has to know that. So it's a matter of being persevering, of being faithful. I just heard a beautiful quote from Benedict XVI, which says, fidelity is the other name of love, or something like that. If you persevere, then in fact, you are like God, who dealt with us human beings who are very unfaithful. And that's why when the Bible talks about marriage, it talks about Christ and the church. So Christ kept on loving us, even though we betrayed him. And that's the secret of marriages. And okay, when my nephew just celebrated his, I don't know what, I think 10th anniversary of marriage. And he was asked, so what is your secret? So he just said, patience. It's the secret, because there are no perfect wives, there are no perfect husbands. That's basically the point of Pope Francis too.
Thank you, Dr. Nidoy. What about our friends from other parts of the world? You can just unmute if you want to go first. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to add
Deacon.
something to that. Yeah, I'd like to add something. Marriage is, like I said, is the cross. I was a Benedictine monk in my 20s. And I can tell you that being married for 27 years, marriage is much harder than being a monk. I'll tell you right now, it is hard, but it's also extremely rewarding. Here's the thing, I'll share something with you. During COVID, when I was home, there's some things that came up in my own marriage with my wife. It wasn't, and we're not getting divorced or anything like that, but it was significant enough that we had to sit down and have some fairly serious conversations. And part of it stemmed from the fact that because, she was busy, my wife's a psychologist. She was busy with her practice and I was busy traveling around the world, that we didn't have very deep conversations. It's kind of like what Dr. Urban was talking about with the kids, like 3.5 minute kind of a thing, and so some of the habits that we developed over the years of our marriage kind of started to go by the wayside. And so now that we're basically forced to be home and together, some of these things came up. And here's the key though, the gift of vulnerability. Here's what I mean. If you look at our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ on the cross, the culture would look and say, look at that weak, defeated man hanging there on the cross. But it's precisely because of Jesus on the cross that we have life. That's the thing about our faith. It's the death of Christ that opened the door to eternal life. But on the cross, he's completely vulnerable. And it's from that vulnerability that flows his strength. And so what couples have to do is not be afraid to be vulnerable, to go deeper, especially the men. I might be stereotyping a little bit here, but typically men have a hard time with their feelings and emotions. And as Charbel so beautifully said, I mean, you have to be able to go deep with your wife. There has to be things that you talk about as a couple that no one else should know. Not because they're bad or anything like that, but there's things that, because of the relationship that you have with your spouse, there are certain things that need to stay between the two of you because of that intimate, the depth of the intimacy of your relationship. And for me as a man, I know that if I talk to my wife about things that are in my heart and on my heart, that when I stood at that altar and I put this ring on, I made those vows, those were for her, not for her friends. So for her to, she might feel, oh my goodness, my husband shared this with me last night and want to go tell her friends. I don't want her friends to know that. That's for her. You see, so not being afraid to be vulnerable, and spouses creating a situation in the marriage where they're giving each other that space to feel safe while being vulnerable. Right. I think that's a beautiful gift. And when we don't do that, then we allow the culture to creep in. We allow all those distractions to creep in. And that's what becomes the focus of the marriage instead of the deepening heart of Christ, especially him in the Eucharist.
Right. Thank you, Deacon Harold, for weighing in on that. And I'd like to just quickly mention that there is a follow-up. So the question is, what can we advise couples who are undergoing marital crisis, and how can we avoid divorce? Marnie Manikad from GMA 7 added a follow-up to that. She has friends who are battered by their abusive husbands, making them lose themselves. So how do we reconcile that versus what the Bible says? So I think it's very much related to that question on the tips to strengthen marriages who are experiencing difficulties. Anyone from the team or from our panel can comment on that?
Yeah, I could say a few words as well.
Sure.
It's a great point. I mean, remember what's happening. To get straight to the point about people in a battered relationship, we aren't forcing people to live in to be in a living hell. Like if it is dangerous in there, you can get out of there in the sense of have a break, separate. If you have to be in different rooms or even be in a different house, you do what it is to just let the situation calm down. I mean, my own parents are not together right now, but they're not divorced. They're not living in the same house, but they're not divorced. They both believe that they will still be, associated friends. They still turn up to the children's birthday parties. They still turn up. And this is my beautiful daughter who's right here. I'll be 1 second, love. Let me finish. Can you take her? But being at home in lockdown is beautiful. But the idea of making sure that we understand, we do what it takes, and they still pray for each other. It's funny. Next week they would have been married for 54 years. 54 years. Now, yes, not all romance. It wasn't all joyful, but at the same time, they really have committed to at least support their children and be there for us. And it's great to see. They turn up, they call us, and they never talk bad about each other to us. So they've even gone so far as to respect the fact that, look, that's your father. I will not stop you from having a relationship with him. But I'm still praying for him. I still want to eventually work this out. But they know that it won't happen overnight, and it's going to take time. So just to quickly understand that, but just tips on how to save marriages. There are some great books. I love the 5 love languages. I really love the tips there, because you can get online right now. If you went to the 5lovelanguages.com and you did a little love test, I think if every marriage did this, there are 5 key ways we show love. And check this out. I mean, the problem is in most marriages, we end up finding our own love languages, and we treat our spouse the way we want to be treated, and we forget that we need to love our spouse the way they want to be treated. And there's a real difference. I'll quickly list them, and then I'll have a point to say. Number 1, words of affirmation. These 5 love languages are common, and so there's one dominant love languages we all have, and there's a sort of a lesser dominant one. But I'll go through them. Words of affirmation. So do you Do you like hearing compliments? And I know many women do, and men also do, and they don't admit it, but they also do love affirmation. The other one is acts of service. You know, do you love doing chores around the house or doing other things for the other person? Receiving gifts. Many of us love receiving gifts. Some of us don't really care for it. Many of us love quality time more than anything. And the other one is physical touch. So words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, physical touch. One of those love languages is going to be more dominant for each other. So in my case, my actually is physical touch and words of affirmation. They're my two dominant ones. My wife, they're like the least important to her. Her most important ones are acts of service and quality time. And here's the thing, it took me like 9 years, you know, I'm married now 15 years. The first 9 years, I was loving my wife by showing her all this physical affection. I was giving her words of affirmation. And you know what? All that time, that's all I wanted. And I was giving that to her. And she was like, okay, I mean, it's not doing it for me, but I would prefer that you would do a bit more acts of service and spend time with me. And the flip side, I didn't need that from my wife. And until the penny dropped, my goodness, I need to treat her the way she wants to be loved. I started to do more acts of service, and I started to carve out time in the day and sit down with her. And the way I found that out was I came home one day after work and I bought her a cup of coffee, and it forced us to sit down and enjoy that coffee. And there we had our quality time, 10 minutes, catching up on our day. The kids are playing, and we're just, before we get into the dinner time and the night time and all that busy time, we stopped and had time together. And we said, this is really nice. This is like a date, an internal in-house date. So the next day I did it again, and then I did it again. And now we look forward to a daily coffee where we sit down and we talk to each other, and the kids know that's mum and dad's time. And that quality time, I'm now able to give my wife what she wants. And now then she actually naturally becomes a bit more affectionate to me. And she now gives me what I'm longing for. And I'm getting the physical affection. I'm getting words of affirmation. She's now getting my quality time, and I'm now actually more active around the house. So once I discovered that, it was a game changer. So if I could encourage everyone to really understand what these love languages are, they're great tips. It's not the be all end all, but they're just a great sort of structure there to help understand how is it that I should love my spouse. And once you discover that, do that, and it just does wonders. So if I can want to share that.
Fantastic insights. Again, you know, gentlemen, we could be speaking to you for another 3 days straight, and I think we won't even get to the meat of things. And seeing as how our media partners, our guests have a lot of questions to all of the questions that we cannot get to right now because we all want to respect your time as well. Don't worry, we are collating those questions as we speak, and we will try to get them to our panel and get the answers back to you after this press conference. So before we ask our panel for their last, I guess, message to our guests, Burns, I think we also would like to once again thank our partners first, our media partners. So let me go ahead and just mention again the other friends from the media that have joined us today. We would like to thank once again, of course, the Philippine Star, Miss Kathy Moran, philstar.com, Jan Milo Severo. We'd like to thank as well Manila Bulletin, DYRF Radio Fuerza Cebu, Mr. Gian Navarro from the Cebu Catholic Television Network, Dan Lopez from Cebu Catholic Television Network as well, Rafi Lobrin from Business World, Andrea Paterna Mato from My TV Cebu. I hope I said your name right. I'm sorry if I didn't. Jasmine Romero from ABS-CBN News. And Burns, we have from your side as well.
Yes, we have here Manjo Mendoza from CBCP Media Family Watch. Also some podcasters from Faith Watch, like the St. Joseph Podcast. We have Paref campus journalists from different schools like Paref Northfield and Paref Rose Hill. We have Marnie Manicad from GMA News TV, Nestle Semila from DYLA Newsbreak, and Rosie Luistro from Alfie, a family apostolate.
So once again, thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us. You know, this is just a sneak peek of the international conference that we are going to be having in December. And if you cannot get enough of our panelists, we'd like to invite you to come see them once again in December. So gentlemen, before we, of course, let you all go, we'd like to ask for one last message from each of you to all of our friends, of course, from the media, and of course, to the general public who will be seeing this after today. Any last words for them about the conference?
Register,
Dr. Nida?
register today. So get on and share the word, spread the word. Get on there. It's. I understand it's free. Get on, get as many people as possible. And really, that's the best thing you do. Jesus says, if you discover a treasure, don't bury it in the field. You must share that treasure. And this is a treasure. I'm telling you, you're going to have these international speakers, some of the world's best, and all absolutely free. And I love the timing of it, you know, right there leading up to the Immaculate Conception, of major feast in the church. And so what a beautiful way to prepare for that feast. Do this conference for free, share it with family and friends, and even have time to maybe discuss it with close friends and draw as much out of it as possible. Take notes, do what you can, and get the most out of this really once in a year these days. But it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, because you're getting some of the world's best in one place. So register and spread the word.
You know, Charbel just used one of my favorite words, and it's the word opportunity. I had a college classmate who he was paralyzed from polio, but he was always in a good mood. And he said he lived by two words, which seems unusual in his circumstances. He said he lived by thankfulness and opportunity. And he woke up every morning and he said, thank you for life and all that I do have, rather than what I can't do. And he said, and for the opportunity to make the most out of this day, to improve somebody else's life, to learn something, so on. And it sounds to me like this thing that's coming up in December is one absolutely incredible opportunity. And I would encourage people to take part also.
Thank you. And just to let everyone know, Dr. Hal Urban would also have sessions next year, creating a caring community. There's a teacher session, and also talking to your kids. A talk for parents is happening on March 12. Dr. Hal Urban is the author of the best-selling book, Life's Greatest Lessons. Thank you, Dr. Hal Urban. And Deacon Harold, any last message or promotions, or Dr. Nidoy?
Yes, I think that you know, this conference is a great opportunity, again, to use that word, to go deeper in our faith. As Charbel said, to understand the why of the faith. And that's extremely important. And, you know, and we're people of hope. That's what I see this conference as, especially during this time of COVID, and people have to wear masks and being away from each other. It's a time to come together, not just as a nuclear family, but as a world family, as a Catholic family. So you have the Philippines, you have Australia, you have the United States, you have many countries coming together as a family to talk about how we can strengthen the domestic church. And the fact that the Philippines is taking the lead in this, I think, is very significant and very important for our world today. And so I would encourage everyone to attend this conference. I myself, personally, I usually charge a fee. I am waiving my fee for this. I'm not just saying to self-aggrandize myself. That's how important this conference is. And I want as many resources going to help build strong families in the Philippines, because I'm telling you, you have strong families in the Philippines, it will reverberate throughout the rest of the world. When people see everyone else is caving in, but not the Philippines, they're standing strong. And that is going to inspire and encourage families around the world, without a doubt.
Thank you, Deacon Harold. Dr. Nidoy,
Yeah.
last few words.
Yeah, just a phrase also that I like from the one of Charbel, what Charbel said, invite as many people as possible. That sounds like the Great Commission of Jesus Christ. Make disciples of all nations. I am with you always, until the end of the age. So we're supposed to make the whole world Jesus-centered. And that has to be the ambition of a Christian heart, to think big, to think of not just our country, but to think of the whole world. We have to evangelize the whole world. And that doesn't come from me. That comes from Jesus Christ himself.
Great. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up today's conference, it's our honor to introduce to you also the CEO of Amici and Karamia, and also the chairman and president of the Parents for Education Foundation, or PAREF, Mr. Danny Moran, for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Burns and Sharon. Of course, I want to thank all the media partners who have made the time to be here this morning for this press conference. We appreciate all your efforts that you've done to be with us here, and we certainly hope that you continue to be with us all the way to the actual conference, and of course to our very awe-inspiring speakers for joining us at their different times. We want to thank you very much for all of your inspirational messages and your insights. I'm sure it has created a lot of appetite for this coming conference. Of course, Deacon Harold, Charbel, and Dr. Hal, thank you, and we certainly look forward to hearing and listening to all of you. So I see that there are a lot of questions, still a lot more questions, and that's good. That means that people are really interested in something like this. How can we kind of like really share the joy? And as Burns mentioned just a while ago, so my business, as some of you might know, I've been in the food business for practically my whole life. Some of you probably know the products that we sell, and it's great that I've also heard about stories having meals together. And so from my personal point of view, in the businesses that we have, and this is food business, both pizza, pasta, and cakes. So what we talk about and how we build the brand is by the experience. It's not just tasting the product, but it's really experiencing it. And we're talking about one product here that to me is outstanding. And of course, we're talking about Jesus Christ, the center of our life. That is the meal. That is the experience that we want to share. So I see there are a lot of questions, and let me tell you, if you want to really feel the joy, experience the conference. All right. So that is what this conference is about. It is, we will share this joy, and we want you to feel, experience the joy, because it's when you experience it that you will want to share it yourself. And so a little appetizer is simply register. Listen to the talks that are already there. Those are like appetizers. Those are like free samples of the conference that's coming up. Then this number of speakers will build over time. And when the actual conference comes, a lot of these questions can be asked. How? We have lots of panel discussions. Who are the panels? Parents, teachers, students, young professionals. So people with different backgrounds, different experiences, different age levels, different parts of the world are going to be sharing their own experiences of this joy of Jesus Christ. And it is in that experience that you will listen to them you can ask them those questions. And just like you had many questions today, when you hear these answers, you get new lights, you get new insights, you get new knowledge, and there's a lot of wisdom that has been shared this morning. There will be a lot more that you can experience when you join this conference. So that is what this conference is all about. It's about being able to experience this joy so you can turn around and share that joy. And we here in the Philippines have really a lot of joyful people. Despite this idea that, oh yeah, marriages are being challenged, there are many happy, very successful, and very fulfilled marriages around that people will want to share and that people will want to experience. And there are many young kids who have come from wonderful families that want to talk about their experiences. And so this is one way to really get in touch with, of course, people that of your age, of your backgrounds, that can also share experiences that they have had and enlighten you, so that will be a very meaningful experience for all of you. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for, of course, Cher and Burns for being our very able hosts this morning. Thank you for you know, carrying on with a wonderful show, I would say, and enlightening, you know, a lot of people with the kind of questions that have been raised here. And of course, to our wonderful speakers, again, we're so honored that you have come to join us, and we continue to seek the kind of wisdom, the kind of advice that you have to all of us here, you know, in sharing your own personal experiences, your own joys, so that we too can reflect that in the things that we do. So with that, thank you very much, and may we continue to spread this joy and of course this message to everyone. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moran. Again, this is just a sneak peek of what we will have in December. Please come back and join us for more of this. If you were inspired by all of our panelists, you will see more of them if you register today and invite more of your friends, your family, those that you want to share the joy with. Go ahead, please don't let this hour pass without registering. We have the website on the screen for you right now. The conference is free, and our panelists, a lot of them are sharing their talents to us, like what Deacon said, for free, because they believe in all of us sharing the joy. Before we close, of course, this press conference, we'd like to thank all of our media partners today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. The JCL team, the very hardworking team. Thank you for everything that you did to put this together. Mr. Man Rentoy, another notable individual. A lot of our panelists were mentioning him. We couldn't have you on Spotlight today, sir, but thank you very much for your help. And to all of you who are have shared your time, your interest, and your energy with all of us today. We look forward to seeing you again in December as we share the joy in the JCL Conference 2021. Partner?
Right. Thank you so much. And that's a wrap for our press conference today. So once again, my name is Burns Ordonez Casi.
And my name is Shara Nonas.
Thank you, everyone. God bless and good day. See you in December 8 to 12.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.